Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our latest FPL draft, but there's no Haaland. That's a bit of a catch. So I know that sometimes people kind of want a bit of a challenge, or maybe they'd say, they want to go a bit different to what everyone else is doing. And let's face it, you can't get any more different than not having Haaland in your fantasy league team. So here's the team on the board right now. It is a team rating. Shout out to Fantasy Football Hub as well. They've given it a team rating of 94%, and that's with no Haaland in it. So we're going to start off in goal, and we're going to start with Edison. The backup keeper is going to be Areola. So we've gone for a combination of a definite playing goalkeeper for a top team, and then a very cheap goalkeeper who could still play sometimes. In defence, we're starting with Estupinan here. Very highly owned. I think he's the most highly owned defender in the whole game. 5 million. Luton at home to start out with. He's a pretty good shout. You'd like to think he'd get some attacking returns across the season as well. Next up in defence, we've gone with a double up of Trippier and Botman from Newcastle. Now, although they've got Aston Villa at home, their next few games are pretty tricky beyond that. But overall, it is still rated 94% for the whole team for the next few game weeks. So, whilst you're thinking maybe Newcastle might struggle against teams like Liverpool and Man City, really the predictor thinks that they should be doing all right overall. The rounding out the defence on the bench, we're going to go with Baldock and Bell, both 4 million defenders for Sheffield United and for Luton. Really not going to be starting with them. This team is a lineup of 3-5-2, and really the bench is something which is a bit of a concern, but we'll discuss that in a bit. The midfield, we're going to start with Saka. Obviously, he's someone that is dead set to start for Arsenal. And alongside him, we're going to go with Odegaard, his teammate, who is also 8.5 million. Forest at home is a great game for Arsenal. If you didn't really want Odegaard, I would still say Martinelli is a great shout as well. Into the rest of the midfield we go, and we've got a double up of Rashford and Fernandes from Man United. Wolves at home looks like a great game for game week one. Beyond that, Man United's fixtures don't look too bad as well. I actually think Fernandes is super underrated this season, and I feel like Rashford has every reason to continue his form from last season after a good pre season under the same manager and a bit more stability going into this one. Rounding out the midfield, we've got Mitoma. Now, he is someone who's still 6.5 million rate value. Luton at home again. And for me, he is about 38% owned. That is very high. But across the 6.5 midfielders, there are some great options in there. You've got Mbuemo, you've got Eze, so you can chop between them. If he doesn't play as well, he's quite an easy price point to get transferred out and get some other reasonably priced options in. Into the strike force we go, and we've got Kane and Jesus. So obviously, if you've not got Haaland, you're probably going to want to have Kane in there. A downside could be where is Kane going to be playing, but he has shown, in a pretty average Spurs team last season, he can still score 30 goals. So really, Harry Kane, I think, was super underrated to be honest last season, and I think whilst Haaland deserves a lot of the credit, think any other season where Haaland didn't exist, we'd be raving about Kane. So he is not a bad option to get in if you didn't want to get Haaland in your team. And like we said, Jesus, there's a bit like Mitoma, there's a lot of 8 million options that you could get instead of Jesus, like Ollie Watkins, Callum Wilson in your team. If he doesn't start the season very well, he's quite a good price point to get off from. And the strikers in Fantasy League, there's not exactly a lot of depth there. I think once you get past a sort of 8 million, 7.5 million player, you're kind of just into a lot of like, well, you might as well be going down to 4 million, which is what or 4.5 million, which is what we've got on the bench as well. Gone with Muniz, and there is a bit of a plan here from Fulham because if Mitrovic does leave, it leaves Fulham a bit short on strikers. They only really have two, maybe three players that could play up there, so he is likely to get some minutes as well. The overall value of this team comes in at 99.5 million, so there is that scope for upgrading somewhere if you wish, or you might want to downgrade somewhere and then upgrade in another position using a bit more funds. For me, the strengths of this team are the funds are quite well spread. There's a lot of good price midfielders, to be honest, a lot of 8 to 9 million rated players across the team. And there's no manager changes either in actual Premier League, their teams, apart from Kane. But Kane could be someone who's having a change as well anyway. And also with Harry Kane, he's shown that he can do it under so many different managers right now. I would say that I wouldn't be too worried about a change in manager for Spurs in terms of Harry Kane performances. And they do have good first week matches across the board. All of them have a great game week one. So it might be the case that you're all these players, they're maybe wild cards after game week one. Maybe you've not got the team you want, or maybe you want to get a look at the teams in action in the first game week. But if you were just planning on doing a team for the first game week, I think this is pretty much as good as it gets. Obviously, the weaknesses are there's no Haaland. You run a massive risk there of not having him in, but maybe you want the challenge of not having Haaland in, and in which case that is, this to me is a pretty good team overall. Although there is no real bench, the bench is, in terms of value for money, pretty low. They have got some players that will play for their teams, or like Baldock and Bell. They really could come in, get you a couple of points every other game week if they've got a good fixture. But apart from that, there's not really any value in the bench. But like I said, 94% rated on Fantasy Football Hub. Go check them out if you're not familiar with them. If you are new to the channel as well, please do like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated, especially on a small channel like we are, as we keep creating content until the start of the season. So thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you think about my team. Obviously, in an ideal world, you'd probably have Haaland in, but in terms of if Haaland wasn't in FPL, I think this team is pretty good. But let me know what you think. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next one.